All right. Welcome to Her Huddle with Wild and Well. Jen and Becca here. We're really excited to have a lighthearted, reflective topic today. We're really talking about travel and thinking about travel really as more than leisure. It's really, an invitation for neurological reset, some deeper self reflection. It's social connection. It's that cultural perspective shift that does us all good in understanding each other better. And when we step into someone else's culture or we're visiting a culture outside of the one that we know day in, day out, our brains and identities really get challenged in a way that promote growth, creativity, empathy, and resilience. And who does not love that? I mean, that all sounds great to me. So this conversation will be we'll hit on all types of travel, and when we say travel, we're not necessarily just referencing like a big bucket list international trip. And so stay with us in that this travel can look like a road trip. It could be camping, or it could be the international big bucket trip. But there is really a true spectrum here of what travel means and how it manifests. So be open-minded in terms of how we think about that today.
So fun. I think about travel and I'm like, it is the place that I grow the most and also have the most fun because it's kind of wild, wild west versus doing like, oh, my plane ticket doesn't actually go through, or oh, I'm in a completely different country and I don't speak the language. And now I'm learning, oh, this activity is not appropriate for women to do or whatever, right? Without the spouse when I went to the Middle East, some of those things and stuff. And so just like learning like where I can be, what I can do, or hey, let me ride on camels for the first time. And it's ethically sound and all that, learning that and stuff, but even some of those nuances. So that's the big ones. And then the small ones are even the food, right? We could get into food and all of that. And so I love travel.
Yeah, amazing. How about before we dive in, unpopular opinion? Do you have one for us, Becca? Anything relating to travel, perhaps?
Yeah, don't I have one for us? Okay, so this is even traveling locally, staycation. We went to two different places within the last couple weeks, restaurants, and they had QR codes, these two particular restaurants. I don't need to say their names because I don't want to bash on them. However, I have decided that if you have a QR code rather than a menu up on the wall, if you want to save trees, by all means, save trees up on the wall, or a reusable menu, or even a paper menu. No judgment on that. I would much rather have a tangible physical menu or up on the wall than have a QR code. And I've been to two different restaurants within the last few weeks where they had a QR code. So my unpopular opinion is restaurants with tangible menus automatically get one more star than restaurants with QR codes. And here's why. One, I'm like a psychopath, right? When I'm addicted to my cell phone or to technology, I think we all are in society, but I will speak for myself. And so automatically here I'm like excited to see my girlfriends. I finally get out for a time, right? Or my family's all sitting together, or and these are nicer restaurants too. So I'll just put it at that. These are
Yeah.
nicer restaurants. And so I'm like, I'm excited to finally, we've saved up or we've had a babysitter or Nick's watching the kids while I get to be with you or other gals. And I'm like, I can't wait. I just get to be present. And then all of a sudden it's like, what kind of coffee do you want or drink or food? Oh, don't think about it until you pull up this QR. Oh, wait, now my mom's texted me. Oh, I love talking to her, but now I'm on my phone. Or, oh, my emails from work. Love what I do, but not right here now. And so I just am not about the QR code at
Yeah.
restaurants. Unpopular opinion is restaurants need to have practical physical menus. What are your thoughts?
I think I'm with you. I think I'm with you. Every time I still feel, I feel like the QR code definitely gained traction in the COVID era because we couldn't all touch the same
For
menu.
sure.
But we've boomeranged. And now when I walk into a place and I sit down and they've got a QR code and I don't get handed a menu, I'm a little disoriented. I'm like, I would prefer the hand, like in my hand copy touch and feel menu. So I'm with you. I think it might be a hot take, but that's where we're at. Analog as much as we can. Give me the hard copy.
Yes. All right. So we'll see. And I don't know the why, right? Is it vision? Is it texture? Is it just experience and what we know? And so it's the comfort of that. I don't, is it reminding us that we are through COVID and COVID times? I don't, yeah.
True. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
all right, getting into it then, just so our listeners and our community knows a bit about you. What what are some of your favorite places, both domestically and internationally, that you have traveled to?
Gosh, I would say, Latin America, like, if you were to put, like, Jen's travels on a heat map, it would be, like, bright red in and across Latin America. Um, yeah, it'd be coming off a page. You would be able to feel the heat, actually. Um, yeah, so I have spent most of my travel budget, my travel time, really focusing on Central and South America. That's where I have spent a lot of my traveling passion, I would say. I have also been to 2 countries in Europe, Spain and France, but I would say throughout the US as well. I have family spread out everywhere. My job takes me different places in the US too, so really spreading the love other than Asia and Middle East. I've not been to either of those places yet, which are really interesting to me, but my background, the Latin America heat map, I am half Peruvian myself. And I also have a boutique travel company that specializes in Central and South America called Southbound Travels. And so I was traveling so much to Central and South America that basically everybody in my life was asking me to plan their trip or asking me where they should go. And so I've just turned it now into Southbound Travels. So I would say that's where my expertise is.
So cool. And such a need for us to get out and explore, and especially those that are wanting more of a all-encompassing feel while also feeling local because you have those experiences too. So
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that you give the shout out. Cheers to Southbound. Grateful for it. So yeah, I think, as you're sharing those, I'm like, man, are there any places that I wouldn't go? Because I've yet to go to Asia. It's at the top of our list. We have to go to South Pacific, on our list. Absolutely, can't wait at some point. And then domestically, take me anywhere. Nick knows that currency for me is travel. Well, you and I have joked about this with our spouses of like, do I need a new bag? Do I need more food on the table? Very grateful for all those things. But no, like, let's save and go. Let's save and go. Let's save and go. And so travel holds a dear space for me locally, domestically, and then also abroad. One of the coolest places that I got to live was Guatemala, and so Central America, which I love, and then married into an international family via the UK and South Africa and whatnot. And so just getting to know other cultures, what I've learned is we're all the same, actually. That is a true statement. It's not a trite statement. It is we as humanity, how we get there, or the few things maybe like on the surface are quirks and whatnot, but overall, we all are part of family systems. We all have different roles that we need to play, putting food on the table, having a job, right? And it does look different from culture to culture. So I won't say it's just a blank map, but yeah, overall. And so that gives me the excitement to say, like, wherever I go in the world, there will be people, there will be animals, there will be systems of government that I have to navigate and we have to navigate. And let's go. So that's where I'm at. What are your thoughts on this idea of slowing down and when we travel, and Southbound really gets into this, but this idea of curiosity over consumption. So this space of, as we see things, how do we ask deeper questions? For example, why do people live this way? So as I'm shopping or as I'm walking around, I sit down at a restaurant and or I climb Machu Picchu, right? Such a cool bucket list of mine. I have yet to do it in Peru. And so I'm there, and instead of me just going, 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 getting to the top, I slow down and I start to say, "Oh, how do people live this way? Or what matters most in this place? Or what can I learn here?" And I start to become more reflective. Tell us a bit about whether Southbound or your disposition towards how we live curiously or how we travel curiously over just consuming.
I would say that one of the ways that I like to think about travel, both for myself and in groups and for clients, is through the lens of like transformational travel. And a lot of the crux of transformational travel is just thinking about the trip itself and the pre and the post trip also as parts of the journey and deepening sort of the question asking, the reflection and integration. So I often think about it as like with a given trip, let's say you and I are going to Singapore in June. I'm often thinking about that as like, okay, what are like maybe the month or two ahead of time? How am I preparing for the trip? That, of course, includes all the logistics, but I think this concept of curiosity and transformation and depth really should or it can start before you're actually going on the trip. Like some of this can look like, like what modern events are happening in Singapore right now? What are they dealing with there? Are they about to be in the middle of an election? Will I be there during some big cultural moment that's happening in Singapore? That curiosity can start to sort of like seed and plant before you even get there. So that's like the preparing phase in my mind. And then the experience phase is you're there, we're actually in Singapore, we're touching, feeling, tasting, meeting, seeing all of these things, and it's happening in real life, like we're actively experiencing it. And that's sort of the experience phase. And then third is the reflect phase. And I think that experience and reflect often happen in tandem. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes we truly just experience a trip and we're not doing a lot of reflection. We're just experiencing it, which is, there's nothing bad about that. I think that that experience has the potential to be a lot richer or deeper if we're facilitating some reflections in and of the experience itself. So at dinner, if we're on our trip, if you and I are having like a really deep conversation about what we might have seen that day, like how did it make you feel, Becca, to see maybe the presidential car drive through the street and see the lack of maybe cultural sort of presence in the same way that we have it in the US. Things like that. I think that sort of reflection is important both in real time and after the trip. And then the last thing that I think about when I think about transformational travel in this way is really just like then integrating some of those reflections when we get home back into our life and what that means for how we're a changed person from that trip or from that experience. So when I think about this idea of curiosity, I see it showing up in like how you prepare for a trip, how you experience a trip, how you reflect on that trip, and then how you integrate that trip experience into your life back home.
I love that because you've lived that out, and I'm like, I haven't named those 3 things, but both neurologically, that is confirmed, and we can get into that, and also experientially and anecdotally, where I'm like, "Oh, the times where I remember reflecting while there or taking it in while there are the richest experiences I've had." And then coming home and I'm like, "Oh, I now see the lens, or I now integrate how I ask questions, or how when I meet a person who speaks another language than me, or the fact that like I love lumpia, which is a Filipino food, like even things like that, where now I look for Filipino restaurants, or some things of those of that nature and stuff. Or maybe it's, in this case, like I have cousins who are Filipino, so that's not exactly the same. But traveling, when you brought up Singapore, I was like, oh yeah, what are some of the foods even that would be so fun to try there and experience, and you and I talk about, or like, going to Central and South America looking for different authentic restaurants now in the US. Don't get me wrong, I love Tex-Mex and things like that, but really like where I know that they're gonna be corn tortillas and no flour tortillas on the menu, or I know that it's gonna have certain spices that smell and taste like a different location that I've been to. And so thinking about that, where I then actively integrate, but then it's also that disposition to say, hey, how do I treat other humans?
Mm-hmm.
How do I integrate it into my own life of saying, "Oh, when I walk into the grocery store, I notice these things," and food's clearly on my mind, maybe because of the restaurant question, maybe because that's just what's always on my mind. But in travel, I feel like that is one of the coolest things that we get to do is experience new foods and different foods and tastes and smells. And you talked about tangible, or taking in different things, and so that really came alive. And then I think reflecting, if I'm honest, of like my solo trips compared to group adventures, compared to family, full planned out, where we pay for someone to give us that, and that's beautiful, all the way to then where it's like bootstrap, let's take it by today. What do we see? What do we learn from the locals? And I think that's a beautiful thing to integrate back into our lives of, in some seasons it's really structured, but in other seasons it's like, all right, where do we want to go? In Denver, there's so many cool natural places to go see that people fly in to go see or drive in to go see. There's
Yeah.
so many, there's so much rich culture and different events and great music scene and sports and all these different things that make up Colorado what it is. And then we have indigenous populations and still pueblos that exist. And then we also have different immigrants of Latin America coming up, and Asia and Africa, and then also of course, Europe and stuff for many generations. And so I think about that all the way to like Unsinkable Molly Brown, which is the Titanic. And I'm like, we've done a good my parents, let me go there. My parents did an amazing job growing up of getting to know our culture and our local
Mm.
culture here, from nature to music to science to then people and human stories and stuff. And so as you were sharing that, I'm like, yeah, integration I think is often what we miss, or what I'm not even aware of doing. So to name it is a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
And then just looking into then like neurologically, it makes sense to me because we love novelty, and so to go experience something, like, our brain allows us to encounter new environments or language, sounds, those different things that you were talking about that we touch or see or the textures we're about, and then what that does is it activates our dopamine system, which is associated with motivation or curiosity and learning, and so as you've shared about some of the places you love, and I'm sharing about some of the places I love, it becomes this place of when I think about travel, I'm the most motivated when I travel, or I'm most curious, or I'm like, "What can I learn here? What can I learn here? Oh, wait, I need to rest today. But well, then let's jump back in and what can I learn here and what can I learn here?" And it makes sense because neurologically, our brain is activated and the dopamine levels are at a higher rate saying, "Yes, go." Do, experience, ask. And so then we come to this place of saying, how am I aware of the things around me? How am I engaged with those around me? And that's the hippocampus then engaging. And so then memories come through that. And so between, again, neurologically, between dopamine levels increasing and then also the hippocampus holding our memories or creating those, it allows us to feel alive and vivid and long lasting because our brain's activated in a different way than maybe when we're behind a computer or when we're doing other things. And so I think anecdotally how engaged I am when I travel, and maybe that's also why I love it, is because the brain's receiving that and saying, continue that. Remember this.
Uh-huh.
What do you think? But what's one of the with that being said, what's one of the coolest things you've learned in Central or South America or wherever in any of your travels? Or I'll give you 2 options. Or what's one of the wildest things that you have done on your travels that just happens when you're traveling?
Oh, wow.
While you're thinking, I'll share one for me. We were traveling in Morocco. We did a lot of research. I was back in college. One of my good friends, she's blonde. We're both white Americans. We're traveling. We know a few Arabic words. We don't know much more, but we're seasoned travelers still nonetheless. And so we're responsible in all this. We're traveling through Morocco, going through the markets again, smelling things beautiful, all this stuff. It's during Ramadan, which I'm so grateful for because we stay at a hostel, we end up going to this spa place, have an amazing experience, but also some like wild components and things like that, just in the sense of like, okay, this is a little more risque than we're used to, like what's happening, but it's cultural, like, okay, all these things, beautiful massage, amazing massage. We come back and the host of the hostel goes, "Where did you just go?" And we're like, and we say the name of it, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, thank goodness this is Ramadan. Otherwise, you would have paid them in favor." We're talking sexual favors, is what this place is known for. We paid them in cash. Don't you worry.
My
But
god.
come to find out that that's a subculture, and we're like, "Oh, it's cheap. It's easy." We had no idea that that's why it's cheap and easy. And let me tell you also, this was prior to, TikTok and Instagram and all the things to say this is when you go or this is what you don't do, or hey, heads up, you pay in favors. So all that to be said, that
Travelers beware.
yes. So through the rest then we met this gay couple from Italy that was down there traveling too, 2 men. And guess what? It looked then like we became 2 because they had to be just again respectful culture, different things like that. They had to be more hands off and appear more heterosexual. So
Okay.
it then ended up looking like the next 6 days we were paired, heterosexual couple here and a heterosexual couple here, and we just traveled with them. And it was like the best situation in the world. But I've since learned like it was a good wake up call in a way that I was protected where I still didn't have something really horrific happen to me. But I'm
Yeah.
like, guess what? Part of travel. And that's a very extreme story. So I realize people listening to this, if you haven't traveled abroad, you might be like, "Ugh." Let
Never getting a massage while abroad.
I know. Let me tell you, this was a wild story, but a very true story. And so do your research. Absolutely do your research,
Yeah.
but also be open to what you learn. Be open to what you see and give that. So that's why I chose wild story. It's one of the wildest stories I've ever had in my life. But here we are, happily living. So I made it out.
Yes. Good.
And I'd go back to Morocco. I would go back and see it with Nick and in some other ways, but I would absolutely go back. So What about you?
Yeah.
Food, culture, wild experience. What are you learning?
Yeah, I would say that I think for me, travel has helped me get out of my food safety net. I wouldn't consider myself a picky eater, but I am by no means an adventurous eater. And like of growing up, high school, college, would not eat sushi. There were just certain things that I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like that, or I don't think I like that, so I'm not gonna even touch it.
Yeah.
And so travel has definitely gotten me out of that. My husband and I were in Argentina a couple years ago, and we went on a food tour. In Peru, there's this dish called ceviche, which is basically just raw fish cooked in, not even cooked, but like marinated in lime juice, and that's sort of like the cooking mechanism. You can get versions of this dish throughout Latin America, but it did originate in Peru, I believe.
Yeah.
And so in Buenos Aires, Argentina is like capital of like meat. And on this food tour, we went to a butcher shop, and there's like four different meat plates that like you get. And one of them it came out in a skull. It was like a bowl, the skull of a cow, but the inside of the skull had been like carved out like for a bowl. So that's where we were starting. And then he was describing it as like a Argentinian ceviche. So he was like, I'll tell you what it is after. And I was just like so scared to eat it, but I was like, I'm gonna do it. And I ended up having seconds, and it was raw cow brain is what it was. And so I was like, I can't believe I just did that, and it was not bad. So I think that all to say, I'm like, okay, integrating that then is like, if you try a new food somewhere else or back home, you're gonna be just fine, most
Yeah.
likely. And you might even like it. What if you like it? What if you like it? Is sort of like the question, right?
Yeah.
So
Wow. Okay. Not on my bingo card. Again, I'm like, yeah, down to try whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, that would be a shock of, okay, here we go. And
raw cow brain, yeah,
there you go. Hey, but at the same time, right? Some people be like, oh my gosh, these are horror stories or these are, just for entertainment or whatnot. And yet that's the reality of traveling is
yeah,
sometimes they are like, let's go. And then other times it's like, this is part of it. It's a holistic thing. Why wouldn't we use the bones of a cow? Why wouldn't we use the hide of a cow? Why wouldn't we use all parts of the cow? Right? That's actually a more holistic approach. And so that's one thing to, integrate into our lives too is like, okay, they do this or this is what I experienced here. Why don't we do it back home? Or what is the reason? And sometimes it's comfort even, right? Like we live in a
yeah,
country where we can have most things manicured, lawns, we can have specialized treatment in many different ways. And so experiencing something like that is like, oh, that just gets thrown out here or whatnot. And then please hear me say, most people there probably do not eat brain, right? We can also call that out
yeah,
of, right, having different meats and different things. But so I think it is that experience of saying, when I'm abroad, how do I learn the culture that's there? How do I engage with it in a way that is fun, that is open? And we just talked about that, right? And these are memories. I know that was at least a few years ago when you went there. And
yeah,
for me, gosh, that was 2011 when I went. And so it's been a long time that Morocco still sticks in my brain of like such cool things. And this 1 2 hour experience that is seared into the depths of my brain that, yeah, that luckily played out in our favor and stuff, so
yeah. And one thing you said there was around comfort, and I think that travel is also one of, if not the greatest, like comfort zone pusher.
yes.
And there's a lot of discomfort with that, and in that is sort of that growth zone, I have to imagine. And I personally love watching people flirt with that comfort zone
Yeah,
concept and be
yeah.
like, can I, should I, do I want to, what is this gonna, how's this gonna make me feel, and yeah, I think there's a lot that can be born out of that from a transformation and curiosity lens. with travel.
Yes. Anthropologists call that cultural humility, or like as you're getting into that, I'm like, I think it's this idea that we expand our perspectives by understanding that my norm is one of many.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't even put a morality to it and saying like, oh, what you do is right or wrong, or what I do is right or wrong. It just says my norm, what I am used to, the comforts that I have is one of many.
Yeah.
Right? And then for you is one of many, and for anybody else, it's one of many, and I love that idea of cultural humility, and the more we travel, the more it expands that, and the more it allows us to understand different cultures and different foods. Even with working with many Muslim students, I've learned, oh, having animals is not a healthy thing in their mind. That is the norm, is that animals are meant to be outside or animals are dirty. And I'm like, they're not wrong. However, in the US, but it doesn't matter about my morality of like, are you right or wrong? But it's saying this is what your norm is.
Totally.
And for me, I have friends who are fur parents, right? And so just owning that and saying they let their babies sleep in their beds, right? And so is one right or wrong? No, I'd say in the US, right? They've loved their fur babies well, and they are thought of as family members.
Uh-huh.
And in some of these other cultures, it's like, nope, they serve a purpose, but they are quite dirty and they bring in these different X, Y, and Z diseases, or they just are a different status than humans. They are different, which dogs are different too than humans. And so then it's like, that also can make sense to me. And so how do I then integrate that into my life to saying, okay, both can be true or both are norms that operate in many and
Yeah.
they look like they're opposing. And in some cases they are, but also it's like, great, this is what you're doing in your household. This is what you're doing in your household. Neither of them are harming something or an animal or whatnot. So therefore, all right. So
Yeah.
I think that those exist everywhere. And sometimes it leads to tension, right? We see that in the US in a melting pot, or we see that across cultures.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet, I think that's that piece right there is like, how do I get uncomfortable when I'm traveling and be okay with it to then when I'm home, be okay with being uncomfortable and learning more about other people?
Yeah, I agree. I think that understanding and empathy, or just the ability to hold multiple truths at one time, is really conducive to different travel experiences.
Yes. There are many ways to live a meaningful life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that. What are you then bringing in for us today just to wrap up then? I know that you are a big journaler, a reflective person. And so the journal prompt feels a little bit ingrained in this already where I'm like, what do we do? Just give out journals and say start doing it daily, right? Because that's a practice that many people have when they travel or whatnot. But for our community, for me, what is the journal prompt for today?
So the journal prompt for today is, if you could travel somewhere to answer one question about yourself, where would you go? And what is the question you would ask about yourself, and why?
I'm not sure where I would go or what the question would be right now, but I love that it's an experiential reason that I'm going and not just a bucket list check.
Yeah, right.
Because I
Exactly.
feel like a bucket list check is just for me
Uh-huh.
to to hit it, to do it, and be done. Whereas this, even though it's about me and my reflection and how I see the world, because that's what I can own, it's saying, what do I need to learn about myself?
Mhm.
And what is that question that will allow me to do that? And where will allow me to do that? Therefore, it's a mad respect for that place or a
Yeah.
hope that that place is X, Y, and Z above what I could ever dream or hope. And so let's go, right? Let's jump in, let's drive, let's walk, let's fly there. And beautiful. I love that question. Let me tell you, I'll get back to you because Nick and I will then be going there.
Love it.
Tickets Bora Bora, and we might spend a lot of money, or we might live, in a camping, whatever. We'll figure it out. But
Yeah.
we will see. And then I'm curious what yours will be. So come back to us, Jenna,
Yeah.
and think about that too. But Wild Well listeners, thank you for joining us today. It's another episode of Her Huddles. We are so glad that you're here. Have a beautiful Monday. Please do reflect on the cultures that you're a part of and how you can integrate that into your life, as well as getting to know other cultures. Enjoy, go travel, be well, y'all.
See ya.